Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Sneha Koshy. It means a lot that you're watching Beyond the Headline. Tonight, we're going to look at the culture of cover-ups. But our focus is going to be when systems fail us. We're going to look at how cover-ups are institutionalized and what must institutions do. There's law, there's systems in place, but what does one do when cover-ups are institutionalized? Allow me to take you through the headlines first. The top court talks tough to the West Bengal government over the timeline of events surrounding the post-mortem and the registration of the case. As unnatural death, says crime scene secured only after the autopsy, asserts that it hasn't come across a case like this in 30 years. After Chief Justice of India Chandrachud urges doctors on strike to resume work yet again, doctors of AIIMS Delhi and RML Hospital in the national capital call off their strike. They are now set to resume work after 11 days, starting tomorrow. Bombay High Court pulls up cops and government over Badlapur horror. Says the cops didn't take the case seriously, and that's why there was action being taken against the school that tried to suppress the issue. So it says the whole machinery doesn't move unless there's strong public outcry. Congress and National Conference gear up for their first polls in the valley after the abrogation of Article 370. Both parties seal their seat-sharing deal on all 90 seats in Jammu and Kashmir. Congress MP Rahul Gandhi says that the alliance will focus on restoring full statehood to Jammu and Kashmir as soon as possible. At least 10 people have lost their lives and over 32,000 have been rendered homeless due to severe flooding following relentless rainfall in Tripura. Chief Minister Manik Saha visits flood-affected areas, schools, colleges shut in the state until further notice. Vinesh Phogat's big charge at Delhi cops. She alleges that the security of women wrestlers have been removed. This before they are set to testify against former Wrestling Federation of India Chief Brij Bhushan Singh in a sexual harassment case. Delhi cops deny charge. Amid the outrage, hurt, shock and unprecedented protests at several levels this generation, there's a common connect. Something that even the courts are now questioning. From a rape and a murder of a 31-year-old doctor at RG Hospital in Kolkata to the rape of a 3-year-old and sexual assault of a 4-year-old, both at the Badlapur school in Maharashtra's Thane, to the Malayalam film industry, where the fight for justice of women in cinema collective has seen a milestone with Justice Hema Committee report that looks at the horror of how women are silenced for speaking up by what is termed by the panel itself as an all-male mafia, and documents glaring findings in a formal workspace is nothing short of sexual harassment. But what does one do in an unorganized sector, or as some say, in a disorganized sector? And especially as the common link to these violations establish the institutionalized culture of cover-ups. Let's look at these cover-ups, or as they emerge as of now, through the lens of the courts and the questions that have been asked. First, the RG Kar Hospital case. Why was the FIR filed 14 hours later? Why did principal not file an FIR immediately? FIR registered only after victim cremation at 11:45 p.m. Parents were allowed to see body after several hours. Why were parents told initially it was a death by suicide? The CBI has said the crime scene altered and the crime scene was secured after autopsy. In fact, the court went on to ask why was the crime scene secured only after autopsy. Next, the Badlapur rape sexual assault case or cases. The Bombay court asked why didn't school report the case to cops? Why second victims or survivors' statement not taken? Looking at a 4-year-old child in this case, it's hard to even call this child a victim or a survivor because frankly this child doesn't even know it. She survived possibly a huge horror that we just hope would have no scars left for her. Why 12-hour delay in filing FIR? Parents made to wait 12 hours at a police station before the FIR was filed. Why no case against the school yet? Courts didn't take this case seriously. If children are not safe in schools, where will they be? And then we have the Hema Commission report on the Malayalam film industry, the first for any film industry in India. The findings, while they are glaring, again have a very close connect to institutional cover-up. Here's the difference. Schools and hospitals are seen inherently, subconsciously by many safe spaces for even the most vulnerable, particularly because of the service they render. While the unorganized sector, with 195 million women part of it, including the film industry, and we were discussing a lot, even the film industry is quite divided on this. They're not very clear whether they are an informal sector, unorganized sector, disorganized sector, because there's nothing officially termed as a disorganized sector. Even they are very divided because it is not a formal sector. Nonetheless, including the film industry, for the lack of a structural identity, the challenge only multiplies. But even as the legal structures collapse. So what is India looking at beyond this outrage, particularly when a judge says systems function when they are forced with an outrage? Tonight we are looking at what must institutions do, what is a cover-up, and what are the systems that are falling apart, starting from how FIRs are filed in these cases, not filed, to the internal complaints committees that are supposed to be extremely crucial, to even how the police is functioning. And of course, there are so many aspects. I'm being joined at this point by Karuna Nandi, who's a senior Supreme Court advocate, Lalitha Kumaramangalam, who is a former chief of the National Commission for Women, as well as Yashovardhan Jha Azad, who's a former IPS officer. Thank you very much, all three of you. Thank you very much for taking your time out. While there are so many questions and so many aspects of what is being discussed in these cases, tonight we're going to be focusing on one particular thing: when institutions fail us. As allegations, questions of cover-ups are now coming from what is being seen as the temple of justice. Many may argue, do not call Supreme Court's temple, and I stand to it, but that's the public sentiment that many times echo, and these questions are being asked right from that platform. Nonetheless, let's just look at what happens when institutions collapse or cover-ups become institutionalized. Karuna Nandi, may I start with you first? Systems are in place. There are legal remedies in place. There are laws in place, some very, very strong laws. You're representing the doctors in the case in the Supreme Court. But what is now emerging is it's a complete collapse at every single level. And it's not just a collapse, because collapse has so many layers to it. But we're talking about cover-ups and, unfortunately, institutionalized cover-ups. Karuna Nandi, do you want to start with showing how this is unfolding?
I beg your pardon. The question was how it's unfolding?
Yes. How is this unfolding? I mean, when we talk about institutionalized cover-ups, there are certain protocols in place, and when institutions don't follow that, are they being part to cover-ups as intentional? But how do you establish that? What are the violations? Or, I mean, again, lapses is very broad, but particularly when it comes to institutionalized cover-ups, what are we looking at in this particular case?
So, look, I'm not going to speak too specifically to the Kolkata case in terms of the police investigation or what the CBI has taken over, because that is currently before the court, and I'm part of the case. However,
Right.
I believe Mr. Azad has
Yes.
been looking into in quite a lot of details, so he must speak to that if he wishes. In general, though, I think that the crux of um, the three huge scandals that we see before us is that there is no alternative to fixing institutions. Because if one institution fails, you have to have another institution to go to, right? This is where the checks and balances come in. For example, if a hospital administration fails, or if the school administration fails, or indeed if the Malayalam film industry fails, and all of these have failed women in a gargantuan way, then the justice system must be that robust. And here, in all these cases, we have seen and even in the Malayalam film industry, actually, in a number of ways that um, the police has also failed these women, right? So the thing is that there is no alternative to take an all of society, all of government approach to fix these institutions and to hold individuals and institutions accountable where it is required. So now, when FIRs are failed to be registered, after the Nirbhaya protests, many of us lawyers who were representing the movements were able to bring in to the new law, Section 166A, which said that a police officer who fails to register on the basis of a complaint, or indeed, otherwise when they come to know of a sexual assault or indeed an acid attack, then they themselves can be held liable, criminally liable, without waiting for anybody's permission, without waiting for the state government's permission, right? So I think that the kind of the kind of uprising that we have seen, and the kind of justifiable anger that we have seen, is a sort of come together of anger, yes, but also a sense of rights and a sense of entitlement to freedoms and a sense of hope. And in response to this, the Supreme Court is responding in the Kolkata case. But in response to this, every institution must undertake a gender audit. We must have the local committees, set up by government under the POSH Act, because the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. Because when the institutions fail, they have to somewhere else to go. It's under the Act. It's not been set up. Right? And so now is the time to have, instead of asking for the death penalty, instead of letting politicians say whatever they will, to have a charter, a very clear charter of demands that says we must be safe in hospitals and in courts and schools, and let us, if you haven't figured it out, let us tell you how to do it.
And you've made a very important point. While you talk about these while you talk about these local committees that are supposed to be in place, I just have a fact with me, and it's rather sad. But out of the 13 committees that are supposed to be in place in Delhi, and I'm trying to find where that fact is for me, out of the 13 committees that are supposed to be operating in Delhi, that's the national capital, there's only one functional. So that itself gives out the reality of where we really are, despite a legal system in place.
Besides the law in place, I'll give you a
Yashovardhan
point.
Azad, if I can come to you next. Yes,
Sure, let's
please
go with
finish your
that.
point, Karuna Nandi, and I'll just go to Yashovardhan
So
Azad after that.
point
Okay,
you're
all
making
right.
is that even Malayalam film stars are in the unorganized sector in some ways, right? Because people come together for various projects. Are they going to complain to the producers, company sexual harassment committee? That's not going to work, is it? Um, and so, therefore, if even Malayalam film stars don't have a place to complain to, and if even children in school, there's no committee, then really, what's the point? Right?
Right.
And so yes, that's one legal lapse. There are
Okay.
lapses in terms of the IPC, in terms of the IPC. There are just huge lapses. I think that um, really, this
Sure.
time round, that institutions must be held accountable.
Yashovardhan Azad, if I can come to you. I mean, let's look at this. The FIRs have become a critical aspect of failure when it comes to all of these cases. Particularly, we're talking about the hospital and the school instance. There was a complete collapse, if I may say, starting from the beginning of when this FIR 1 was filed to how the FIRs were filed. So one, where the rape and the sexual assault happened, how those institutions responded, to how eventually the police responded to people who did reach with an FIR. So it's a complete collapse at different levels. It's not just at the first level. The next level that's supposed to be looking at it also fall apart. And this is happening irrespective of laws in place. Yashovardhan Azad, when the police in uniform turns to be the aid of a crime or a facilitator of a crime, what are we even looking at?
Well, we can't call them facilitated crime. We can, of course, allege complete incompetence on their part and trying to work crime, trying to minimize crime. And therefore, for example, in the first instance, in both these cases, the first responder should be the owner of the place where it has happened, the principal. For example, it was incumbent upon him immediately
Correct.
to report this to the police. Secondly, the job of the police was to immediately lodge an FIR, especially in a case like this where they are straight away you can see the signs of a cognizable crime. If you see a case where you cannot find out whether it's a body, whether it's a straight murder or not, you can of course register a murg, which is unnatural death, and then you have a murg panchnama, and later on after investigation do it. But in these cases, it was fairly obvious that a crime had been committed, so an FIR should have been lodged immediately. Why it is not lodged, I tell you, because there is a complete lack of responsibility, knowledge, training, everything, leadership at the lowest level, because at the level of ASI or at the level of head constable, they are absolutely not strong enough to do anything on their own. And this takes time. This is a very, very serious lapse on the part of the police, which we have seen in both the cases. In the second cases where you said the police not registering for 12 hours, I think they should be culpable for being complicit to the crime, because especially in a POXO case, in any case, the failure to report a crime is also illegal. You're liable, that you can be proceeded against, and also if the police officer, as Mr. Nandi rightly told, that 166A can be applied because you're legally bound to do it. And one of the things again I want to say in this particular case is that what Mrs. Nandi said is the crux, that there is no alternative to fixing of institutions. In all these cases, whether there are schools, whether there are hospitals, whether there are colleges, and all these institutions where the women are vulnerable, all these places, and these incidents are happening everywhere. all the time, male nurses misbehaving. Then
Absolutely.
there was a foreign lady
Absolutely.
who was again violated. So unless the head of these institutions are strong, head of these institutions take full responsibility, nothing can be done. The other thing which I want to tell you is that's very important. For example, I give you my example. When I was DIG Bhopal, one of the most important thing we had was a liaison with all the principals of women colleges, boys schools, other colleges, and we used to have regular meetings. And I remember being invited by the lady principals to talk to those students, to the teachers, to build a kind of a confidence bridge between us. Now, these are things I don't know why they are not happening now, especially in an age of social media where you can keep in touch on Zoom and so many other things. But these are small, small brick building exercises which need to be done. We can talk big later, but small things can be done immediately. Over to you,
Can I ask you a question?
Sneha.
It's going to be difficult to answer this question because sometimes what we do is not tangible. So you have a lot of, you have a lot of policing, like the civil police, if we call it. They are part of the police, but they are very much like you have in Kerala, you have something called the Janmaitri police. They branch out into the society, work with the society, with women groups and stuff like that, as you mentioned. But how much of that really resonates when it comes to crimes like this? Because I'm trying to understand, if your first response is going wrong, then where is the place to fix it? Like, for example, this may sound political. Mamata Banerjee has asked for a stronger legislation where an accused should be convicted and the punishment should be given within 15 days. That's one part. But even for the existing problem, far from even treading the established legal proceedings. I'm trying to look at that.
Well, are you asking me?
Yes,
Is the question
Mr.
directed to me?
Yashovardhan Azad.
Yeah. See, let me tell you, for example, many community policing has been coming for a long time in a very big way, and some of the places it has been doing very well. There's no doubt about it. The question is that the most important thing I would say is the appointment of the right people at the right place. When we talk about police reforms, it's not a hollow kind of a demand. If you place a right commissioner, for example, I would openly say that the Kolkata commissioner just did not live up to his, job, responsibility, role, personality, or anything. Simple thing. If people do not have faith, for example, I would say that the Calcutta police would have cracked the case. The only problem was that nobody believed in that institution. They had, because they lodged the fire so late. Now, so the question here is, how will you believe the institution unless the head is believable? That is what happened in the hospital. That is what happened here. Why? The entire political,
And that's what's happened in the
mass
school as well.
does not allow
Because in the
belief.
school as well,
Yes,
yeah,
in the
absolutely.
school
Because in
as
the
well.
school as well, as you're mentioning, it was basically no action taken. They did not go to the cops at all. But can I just get in Lalitha Kumaramangalam at this point? Let me just take it from where Karuna Nandi left it. And this, we're looking at the POSH Act. POSH Act
Yeah.
is supposed to be something that's the strongest to protect women at workplace.
Yes.
But let's just look at this fact. In Delhi, as an example, only 1 out of the 11 local committees are working. Why are local committees important? Because there is no structure as such. So local committees are supposed to at least bridge that gap. I'm giving you an example of Delhi because I have data for Delhi. Across India, this has failed. This has completely failed. It's not taken off. India boasts of a local system government. So it's not like this cannot be done because you have strong panchayats, you have strong local bodies. So this is something that can be done. It has not been done. It's not a matter of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, decades now. Lalita Kumaramangalam, when are we going to wake up?
wish I could
What
give you
will
an
it take for
honest
India
answer
to
to that
wake up?
question.
I mean, what will it
I
take for
think-
India to even establish institutions that can comply to laws? You know, let's start with that. When will India wake up is a very late thing.
You know, the fact is that the laws in India exist. The problem is in the implementation of the laws. And this is what all three of us on this panel have said. At all levels, institutional adherence to the law is just absent. Equally importantly, gender audits just don't take place. Now, gender audits have to be in all institutions, beginning from the top, which is the government itself. I don't think gender audits are taking place in the government. I don't know about the judiciary, but I doubt it, but I don't know for certain. But I don't think they're taking place in the legal system. I mean, in the police either. Knowledge about the posh law is very, very poor. It's a very, how do you say, complicated law, and even too many lawyers don't know the details, etc. Bigger companies who have their committees, etc., in place, women can complain, they do get heard, etc. But when it comes to educational institutions, I haven't heard of even a single one where there's actually a posh committee in place and lawyers are, called upon when a complaint is made. The point here also is that in India, there is a culture of silence throughout. It's not just about in homes, it's about in every institution. Very rarely can women think that they can safely make a complaint about sexual harassment. Most of them are afraid to lose their jobs, and that often happens. Most of them will be typed
So that's the question, Lalitha Kumaramangalam. While we know these problems, what's the way out? Because, I mean, look at what the court has said. Court has said systems are moving only when they are being forced to move with outrage. And that's literally what we're seeing across. When did the Justice Hema Committee report come up? Historic in its own way because it's happened for the first time in any industry. It was after women stakeholders of the Malayalam film industry came together in an unprecedented manner, demanded for it, fought for it at the cost of being boycotted and losing out on jobs. They have said this on record. What's happening in hospitals, what's happening in schools, both the cases, is absolute outrage from stakeholders. So,
exactly, this is what I'm saying.
The ordinary person, the ordinary citizen is saying, we have a culture of shame and silence, but we are being forced out of it because despite that culture of shame of silence, work is not happening. Those who are meant to do the job are not doing it.
Look, society, the way we think, we need a huge mindset change. Given today's society where you have a proliferation of social media, etc., where sex is not portrayed as, I don't know what words to use. It's not, most of it is about unsafe sex, let me put it that way. And I'm not talking about disease, etc., disease prevention. I'm talking about the fact that people, whether you're right from a very young age, girls are taught to be careful. The entire onus is put on women and girls. Men are not taught responsibility for actions. And this is a mindset change that has to take place right from a very young age. Now, when you talk about institutions, remember educational institutions play a huge part in people's lives. People laugh at me and people may say I sound retrograde and chauvinist and old-fashioned and all of that. But when we were young, we were given classes about what is right and wrong. I think they called it value education then. I don't think this is happening today. We need to start teaching our children that right is right and wrong is wrong. And that, of course, includes all form of gender bias and gender abuse.
You know, Lalitha Kumar, the problem with what you're saying is, while obviously there are some who are going to agree with you and some who are not agreeing with you, the results of what you want right now, even if it's done in the way that is correct, and I'm not talking about moral teachings, but I'm also talking about, say, safe touch, unsafe touch, and all of that. All of that is required, but it's going to take results in years. I don't think we can even wait a month more for all of it to be implemented.
Look,
I don't think we have the time.
That we can't wait when it's
I can't wait for a toddler to turn
agree that
turn
this is going
15,
to
16.
take
That's one part of
can't
the
happen
problem.
overnight. Being impatient is not going to help.
It has
Sneha ji,
to.
because
Lalita
it's
Kumaramangalam,
been
I think we all
eons
are
that
running
this
out of
sort of thing is
patience.
going on.
India
I
can't
know
be an
we have all
unsafe
lost
place.
patience, but that doesn't help. Losing patience only sets other people's backs up, and then they turn around and say, "Look what a fuss they are making," blah blah, and we lose the battle once again.
I
These
don't
are
think so. Losing
institutions
patience
that
also causes the
have to be
outrage
set
that
in
finally
place.
forced fires to happen. But I leave it at that. Let me just get in Karuna Nandi at this point. Karuna Nandi, taking it from where Lalitha Kumaramangalam has left, she spoke a lot about the organized sector. Let's look at the unorganized sector. I want to ask you a question. For somebody who is part of an unorganized sector, is there any system in place? It's ICC. Does it exist for them? The Internal Complaints Committee, I'm told it does. It should be there. I don't see it there. What is the system of recourse? We are talking about formal sector where it's collapsing. But for the informal sector, what's there?
I mean, there's the criminal law system and there's the civil law system, which is difficult to go through, difficult to access. That we don't have enough courts, we don't have enough judges, but it does exist, and women should use it. Women should use it. The thing is that
You don't have money. It's
what you
expensive
were
to do
saying
this,
about the
Karuna Nandi.
patriarchy only getting the way it is now is something that is unconscionable. And we've seen, for example, from about 15 years ago, the MRAs not really being taken very seriously, to now so-called men's rights associations and misuse of 498A, which exists in limited part, ignoring the millions of women who are over the years killed and harassed because of dowry. We see them getting equal space in the public domain, and we see laws being created. We see judiciaries being influenced in a repackaged patriarchy, where patriarchy is then fed to us again as victimhood. So there is no option but to do something, actually, to take action, to make sure that every single day that women and allies band together and change it, because now hacks are required. And unless we as a society, not we as a society, we as individuals and as families and allies within families, because let's be clear, families are not perfect either, allies in workplaces band together to make sure that there is justice and that there is freedom, a freedom to work, freedom to be ourselves, freedom to express what we will, and not to be attacked and raped and to be looking over our shoulders all the time. We need to take action for this and make sure that our own institutions are responding to us.
Yashovardhan Azad, just one last question to you, sir. Being passive, knowing something is happening in the institution, you may be a part of you may be heading a small institution, a bigger institution, knowing that a crime has happened or knowing of an allegation that has emerged and not acting upon it, is it criminal offense?
There are two sections here, as Karnaji also would agree with me, 201 and 202. 202 is when you're legally bound to report something, you can be liable. And 201 is that when you interfere with the evidence part of it. But Sneha, I would like to speak on the issue why we are, in a way frozen in time about this. I totally agree with you that we can't wait anymore. Things can be done. In fact, I expected the Supreme Court under Article 142 to even direct and ask the various states, what have you done with the Nirbhay funds when only 37% has been spent? There are so many good schemes for the women. And these are schemes which will help, like buttons in the buses, basic things I'm talking about, small things which can be started, which can be initiated. And if Mrs. Nandi says that this can be done through these various, action groups, women groups, then it should done. And I'm telling you, this can be done. It's just a question of some people taking initiative. Good commissioners in their areas can pick this up and make, crimes against women a no tolerance zone kind of thing. So, unless we try this in various places, create that kind of an environment and ambience over social media, over so many things. I tell you another thing, Sneha. It's not that the things have not improved. They have improved a little too. In many places I have seen, but these things which come up, of course, set us back. But these are not things which are, happening every day. These things are happening again just to remind us that we still have to go a long way. And that is the thing which is in front of us. Sneha.
I think I'm being told to wrap. We're totally out of time. I'll take it from there. Karuna Nandi, Lalitha Kumaramangalam, Yashovardhan Azad, your time has been extremely important and precious. You three bring in a lot of experience from the sectors that you are in. I'm sure viewers value what you speak and would hear each of you. But I think let's just agree on one part. India can't afford this anymore. India can't afford action after outrage, and India cannot afford another child, another woman being a victim of such brutality. That's not acceptable. I guess that's what every one of us would agree in. Institutionalization of cover-ups, unfortunately, is going to take a lot more to see an end to. Karuna Nandi, Lalitha Kumaramangalam, and Yashovardhan Azad, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time. I'm also being joined at this point by Chinmay Shripada. Many of you know about him, about her, apologies, as a singer. As a singer who's raised her voice on several issues, even as the Justice Hemachandran Committee report is out, the glaring findings of it that have now documented about how there have been the way the industry has been functioning literally is nothing short of what would have been sexual harassment, assault at workplace. But nonetheless, Chinmay, let me just ask you one question. You're part of this film fraternity. You're part of the film fraternity in India. How do you really look at these findings, particularly in the light of what's happening across the country?
If you had to ask me about my own personal journey in this, when I spoke about my molester in 2018 during the second wave of the Me Too movement, because I always want to doff my hat to what Raya Sarkar did in 2017 and what they did with Losha, the list of sexual harassers in academia. And after Raya Sarkar, I think what started as, I think one tweet just snowballed into something huge during the 2018 second wave of the Me Too movement. And even then, right, I think the film industry took a lot of the attention, but the other sectors that definitely were speaking about so much of this, because when somebody in the education sector has a lot of power, especially if it's an HOD or a senior with a certain amount of power, power dynamics there, especially in the field of medicine or in the field of education, if somebody is a PhD, the kind of mentor, the power that a mentor wields or a principal wields, and how their entire education and their degrees at stake is something that I was, reading a lot. Then this is, of course, all of the people who have the access again. And then again, when you look at the social structure, we don't have as much attention going to women who or people who are non-binary, and they don't get the kind of access, nor the attention, nor the kind of media attention, most importantly. Even here, right, in this case, the judge seems to have commented about he has never seen something like this in 30 years. But we saw Hathras unfold in front of our eyes. The same very similar pattern where they were in a hurry to burn the victim's body and the police did it. We saw that happen in front of our eyes. And today I read a tweet about a Racticus 3-year-old child getting raped. And see, all of us, right? If we look at the kind of access and the status that many of us have, either due to education or anything else. But what about the most this part of society which does not have all of this access? What about the child that unfortunately in 2024 we are talking about $1 trillion economy and things like that? What about the safety of everybody and the right to life and the dignity to life? And this sort of the sexual abuse in school actually blew up a couple of years ago right here in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu. And as long as I am concerned, in Tamil Nadu, if you look at it, the connection between the film industry and politics is very, very strong. So the man that I named is extremely popular as a lyricist, and he gets bolstered by the chief minister of Tamil Nadu, the ruling party of the Tamil Nadu, and he's there. People might argue with me saying that he is not part of the DMK. Why would you keep naming him and make this a big issue?
So are you then saying that speaking up, speaking out has a huge cost?
We are definitely, it is very important to speak about the safety of doctors and medical professionals in hospitals, especially after all the anger that the medical professionals have faced during COVID. But what about the other healthcare workers, right? What about the nurses? What about the other auxiliary healthcare workers that are there, who do not have the power, nor the agency, nor the money, right? Because speaking up costs money. When I say speaking up costs money, they will hit you where it hurts the most. I have been able to take the financial strain of losing work because I have the privilege to do so. But what about somebody who's, every month's bills and taking care of aged parents and educating the children is a cost that they have to pay for speaking up against an abuser or in an oppressive system?
It's horrifying to imagine what you're speaking, and particularly when you look at what's emerging out of Kerala with the Justice Hemachandran Committee report, which itself is, a first perhaps for any film industry across the country. What has emerged out of a very historic battle by some of the women from the industry who did manage to come together, Chinmay. But is it much more difficult in an informal, unorganized sector? And do you see the film industry as an unorganized sector?
It's interesting because I think we walk a very fine line between a form. I don't know if we will actually get into formal sector. Are we or are we not? Because there is a whole lot of people. Forget the 1% of the superstars in this country, right? Forget the Shah Rukh Khans or the Rajinikanths or the I don't know, sirs and Vijay sirs. Now he's now a politician. But one very notable thing that I noticed in my own backyard, which is my own home, which is my own industry, so many women speaking about the very molesters that make our own workspaces unsafe. We do not get the support of our own seniors. I mean, you have Mr. Kamala Hassan, who's an actor who's made his foray into politics, and then he continues to be one of those people who platforms the very molesters that were named. So who are we supposed to go to, right? We ask about institutions and systems in place. And today I read another report that is it 150, over 150 MPs have charges of what? Sexual assault, rape, abuse against women. They are sitting right there in the parliament. And they are the ones who are going to be writing policies and laws. Who do we go to? Who's going to police the police?
While you're saying who do you go to, that you have your colleagues, your seniors who wouldn't back you the way you would want. There's another aspect to it, and I'm coming to it again because it's complex. Do you even have systems in place? In your industry where you are, do you have ICCs, the Internal Complaints Committee, in place? Is it there?
I will tell you about this case about actress Vichitra. She actually came on this show Big Boss, which was hosted by Mr. Kamal Hassan. She spoke about how she was abused on her workplace, and then the cinematographer basically physically assaulted her. Matlab, she got slapped or hit or something like that. I forget the finer details of it, but she was physically assaulted. She, after getting with the bruises and everything else, she took some time to collect herself, 3, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, and then she went to the police station. And she said she got no justice. The man, the cinematographer that she's named and a case is filed against, he continues to be a cinematographer for mainstream Kannada movies even recently. So even if we do approach the police, right? End of the day, I think power matters. Who has money matters. And today, I know for a fact that if I had been more politically powerful or connected or had more money in some way, form or the other, I would have been able to overturn my ban immediately. And I say this with all my privilege, with all my reach on social media. I say this, I can only imagine how horrendous and horrible it will be for somebody who doesn't have any of the bolsters and cushions that I have.
Well, Chinmay, Sripada, thank you. And I guess I'll just leave it at that, because what you have said, let it just sink in to the viewers who are watching you. That in itself is a very strong statement. And going forth to see any changes immediately around is going to definitely not be a possibility. It's going to take a while. But nonetheless, thank you for raising your voice. Thank you for your time. And thank you for responding to these questions. Thank you very much. Well, it's time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll bring you all the big stories.